Welcome to the TFG Aftershow, where each and every week we try to give people a little sense of what we do here at the Financial Guys offices. We look at some of the key people that make a difference in our organization. We also bring in some prominent difference makers to find out what they think about some of the things going on. So I'd like to mention that, as always, you can reach us at 833-FIN-GUYS. You can check us out at thefinancialguys.com. We do manage money for a living. We have life insurance. We have property and casualty insurance covered. We even have estate planning and college planning here, folks. So if you need us throughout the week, 833-FIN-GUYS. I'm Mike Hayflick, along with my partner, Mike Speraza. Pardon me. You're not Mike Hayflick. I'm Mike Hayflick. Today, we're really happy to have a couple guests here, not just one, but two people. Erie County Comptroller Stefan Mychajliw, for a return visit, actually. And we also have attorney and engineer Peter Reis. Now, today, I want to thank you for joining us first, guys. Thank you.
Well, you said prominent, and yes, that applies to Peter, but I don't know if it applies to yours truly.
He's
the star of the show. I don't know about that. I heard Peter Reis was coming on. I'm getting on this show.
Stefan is a prominent wannabe. He's on his way to prominence, all right, every day. So I think today we can say we've got two maybe opposing views. We have a Republican, a Democrat. I think people are often going to think, oh, there's going to be all sorts of conflict. There's going to be all sorts of friction. Our group, and I know people know this, we're unapologetically conservative. We don't hide that. That's kind of who we are. But today is really about trying to find some common ground on some things. And I think people are always wishing for all of us, I guess, getting together and saying, can we just agree on one thing and get something done?
Just having a healthy debate.
Right. Absolutely.
Right. Regardless of what your views are.
Or just discuss.
Right.
Just discuss without any end goal in mind. Right. Just
no fist fights.
I'd lose. But without
that's why we put you on opposite sides of the
canceling
table.
someone or being angry with someone. I mean, isn't it crazy, though, that we have to have a discussion about having a thoughtful discussion?
Yeah, that seems like, in the past, I don't believe we had to really even talk about that. Right. That brings me, though, to the first thing. You have opposing views on certain matters, but is it true that there's always like some kind of animosity, friction between the two of you?
Never. I think the world of Peter, like I've known you, God bless America, more than 20 plus years, going back to East Side Democrats, and I applaud Peter. We have a rescue dog, and Mr. Reis is heavily involved with rescuing animals, and he's someone, it's like a Seinfeld episode, I'm talking about you and you're sitting right there, but like even though on some issues Peter and I may disagree, he and I would shake hands and have a beer somewhere because we can agree to disagree. And I think if you're looking for common ground, I think the one thing that we have in common is that we both married up. That I think
that's very true.
Our respective wives must have lost like a drunken wager to marry us. His wife's amazing. She's a spitfire. I never want to mess with her. But yeah, I think it's so sad in America now that even people with supposedly differing viewpoints, that everyone's so afraid just to talk about ideas, even though it may either hurt someone's feelings or disagree with someone.
Right. Did you marry up, Mike?
I would say I probably did, yeah.
I will put myself in that category, too. I am not the smart one. I'm not the smartest one in the household, okay?
Isn't it true, though, that nowadays it's almost, you're on pins and needles just to have a discussion with someone in a public setting, even though you may disagree with someone?
That's true, but at the risk of making myself a little unpopular, our former president didn't help any. He went out of his way to polarize and, turn discourse into a fist fight. I'm sorry.
Oh, see, you went there. I talked nice about your wife, and you go right to Donald Trump.
Well, let's talk though about that. I mean, we often would say, "My goodness, this Twitter feed, like he's just connected to it, almost like it's a lifeblood to him." I mean, at times I have to agree with Peter that sometimes it was like just not necessary to know his attitudes on some of these, celebrities and I don't know. Was that just to get people to listen? I mean, did he really care about chiming in on these things?
I'll say this too, though. As much as I agree with that, I also do think, though, that, stuff that we're having conversations about, we're obviously not attacking each other. It's gotten to the point where if you just have a differing opinion than something, I have this with our own group of friends, right? We talk about this stuff, and I'm the dissenting opinion of the group, and I get looked at like I'm a bad person for that. And I just don't think at this point in time, I know he's very, he was very polarizing, but just because we may have a belief or two that are like him doesn't mean that we can't have conversations in a public setting. And I think that's where we've gotten to at this point,
Yeah, I think people couldn't look past some of that bluster, and instead of like really just seeing through it and getting to the actual policies, that's what I think was harmful. I mean, it never really got to anything relating to policies in many cases. Right. It was simply, I don't like you and you don't like me.
Right, but bigger picture, I think there's maybe we could find some common ground here, is the fact that whether you believe that, whether it's the president or offensive speech, whether you agree with it or not, that in this day and age, he has a right under the First Amendment, as everybody does, to take to whatever platform you so choose and to express your beliefs. And that's the problem that I have is, again, this cancel culture where automatically if you say something that hurts someone's feelings, you're automatically a racist, you're automatically a hateful person, and that we're going to try and, in whatever capacity they can, shut you down. And I think, and this is where like maybe the former journalist in me and the staunch supporter of the First Amendment is, that I would strongly defend the First Amendment and those whose speech is offensive or deemed to be offensive, even if you disagree with it.
Well, there's an interesting situation with First Amendment. There's some debate occurring on this now. There are some people who are saying, well, maybe our First Amendment concepts are obsolete. One of the things that bothers me is, do you have the free speech right to tell lies, to spread things that aren't true? And the courts in the past have pretty much ruled that the way to drive out lies is more of the truth. However, with mass media, instantaneous social media contact, etc., there's now a real debate going on. Tim Wu is one of the people, who's a pretty famous person. Actually, I think he ran for lieutenant governor in New York State a few years back, who has done a lot to talk about, how we can keep the internet free and available to everyone. But he has expressed some opinions pretty much that indicate that there may be some problems with traditional concepts of free speech. Myself, in general, I agree with the idea that, though I may dislike and despise hate speech, it is still constitutionally protected. About the only speech that you can engage in is, at least, vis-a-vis the government stopping you, is something that's going to incite to immediate violence and,
Right, but it goes so much farther, though, guys. I mean, at least, again, I think there's somewhat consensus here, is that if you say something that hurts someone's feelings, automatically they run out a corner, suck their thumb in the fetal position, and take to social media and label you as a hateful racist. Mm-hmm. It's crazy now. I mean, it's totally out of control.
What I think, too, is, you start to then, there should be fact-checking, right? And it should just be constant fact-checking and then further debate about what someone may have said. It shouldn't become censorship. It shouldn't become canceling. It shouldn't become prohibiting from Twitter, prohibiting from being on Facebook. I mean, once you do that, then it's whatever one group thinks is okay, essential for people to see, that's all we're going to see.
I think that's what we're going to get into our next question too, but it just seems that, and this is both sides, if one side does it, the other side hates it. If the other side does it, the other side hates it. There's no common ground at all in anything. So, again, I'm not saying that Donald Trump is perfect, but he's thrown off of Twitter, yet our vice president was saying she would pay for a bail fund for some of these people back over the summer for what they were doing, and she's still allowed to be on Twitter daily. It doesn't all add up. That's where it's very frustrating for me. If we were going to make rules, let's make rules. If we're not going to actually enforce the rules, then let's not do it. And that's what we've done. We've canceled a former president on Twitter, but other people that do the same thing are still there daily. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Difficult. I think we'll never find anyone who can be like the true neutral party to be kind of the referee. Right. Never going to find it.
Well, no one's God. That gets into something. Why can they throw you off Facebook? Why can they throw you off Twitter when, in fact, the government couldn't? Because they're private. Okay, right. So there's a distinction between what government can do and what the private sector can do. If you want a good laugh, look at the haters who are always posting on Steph's Twitter account. And they're usually anonymous, and it doesn't matter what he says. If he says, good morning, they get on and they say, you dirty SOB, Rackam Fritz, how dare you
and
say that?
And that's just my wife posting that. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, but I think to expound on Mike's point, I think that's what angers conservatives, though, or at least a lot of people on the right, is that there appears to be a different set of rules for a Farrakhan who tweets or other people who post offensive things on social media, and yet there's a separate set of rules for conservatives, even though that platform is private. Yeah, my social media lights up. It's somewhat humorous for staff that reads it.
You're doing something right.
Hey, it's what was it, Churchill? If you're not angering someone, then or you made enemies good, that means you stood up for something.
The last time we interviewed you, I remember looking at the Twitter feed later that night, and they're like, "Oh, and now you went to these two idiots," and I'm like, "Oh, come on!" So, I think that's right, Justin. I'm like,
"Come on." Nice things about talking to you, but not with me. Their social media is going to light up saying, "Wow, that Peter Reis guy's great. You let a Democrat and a liberal in. Wonderful for you guys."
Yeah, exactly.
I'm bringing you along more often.
Right. And while we're on this, I want to bring this up. Since you're the dollar guy for Erie County, aren't we spending money because of some? You're not stopping people from, slamming you on Twitter, but aren't we paying money to somehow or other stop people from slamming Palankars on something? He was Xing people out. Aren't we now? Isn't that costing you money?
Yes, it's costing a boatload of money. The county executive. It's my belief, had a press conference, and he had some very harsh words for a nursing home owner. That's what the case was. It was someone who operated a local nursing home. I believe they're from the New York City area, and they sued Mark Palankars. And yes, you're 100% correct. County taxpayers are picking up the tab because of what he said at a press conference, and the owners of the nursing home are suing him.
Isn't there something about Twitter account, though, or Facebook account?
I think that for him, it's an issue of using that social media platform for your personal beliefs and fundraising, and then also posting government information. And yes, taxpayers are on our foot in the bill for that.
If you make it a government account, if you do government business on it, you can't censor people. Again, distinction between public and private. And I think there's some sort of outstanding litigation on that right now. I think that's costing us money.
Yeah, it is. And taxpayers are footing the bill for it.
It is interesting how people's personal beliefs and their positions, everything's sort of starting to bleed together. And now here we are, we have to try to dissect it and say, wait, did you say that as your own opinion, or was that actually, a public statement? Is that your official stance? Right. It's getting a little messy.
Well, and we said this yesterday, but I think what's scary is I grew up in this generation of social media. This is, Facebook was getting big as I was in middle school, high school, Twitter as well. I mean, it's very scary how many people go to Twitter and Facebook and act as if it's the truth no matter what they read. It does not matter. It could be a blatant lie, and it seems so common sense. That's a blatant lie. You read it on Twitter, it's fact. And I think that's what's a really scary thing for the long term. Our 18-year-olds, our 15-year-olds, our 12-year-olds, 10-year-olds, they're growing up just reading Twitter all day long. That's all they do every day. And it's a scary thing.
And you don't often see retractions of the lies and corrections of those statements. That's the problem. Right. You just keep rolling along, and everyone keeps reading along, but you don't see, oh, I was wrong.
And if you read it long enough, you're going to believe it. You're going to think it's factual, and you will get used to using that platform as your source of the news instead of maybe the news.
Let's go to some national stuff. I know we have. Go ahead.
Yeah, so this is one I wanted to ask for both of you guys. So obviously, the border issue right now is out there. It's all over the place. Yesterday, the president was talking about the baseball stadiums filling up this year. The Texas Rangers have said we're filling the stadium. They don't care what's going on. They said opening day we're going to have a full crowd. President Biden said, I am not a fan of that. I believe that's a big mistake. You need to follow Fauci, follow the science, and you should not be packing your stadiums. For me, it kind of contradicts what we're doing at the border, where we're just letting people in. We have rooms of people with hundreds and maybe even thousands of people in a small room. It's not adding up. Can you touch on that, on your thoughts on that, and you the same, Peter?
I want to hear Peter first.
Well, I'm not that familiar, quite frankly, with what's going on at the border, but the border's always been a train wreck for us because it's virtually impossible to defend, and people are coming across. I tend to agree with Fauci. I think we should hold on a little longer. I mean, I wear a mask in public. There's no two ways about it. I do it as a sign of respect for other people and, to protect them from me potentially. The border, I don't think anybody's handled the border well. First off, tell me when the last person was who handled the border well.
Well, but I think it's also the hypocrisy, though, where under Trump, it's this awful humanitarian crisis, and we've got us up. But yet, now that kids are in cages under the Biden administration, I believe the media's given the administration a free pass.
And my thought too is it's not even so much the border issue; it's the border issue with COVID right now, because our country is completely shut down from this, and it's now month 13 or 14 we're going into here. It just is very interesting to me that we're now opening up stadiums, but yet now that's a bad thing. Yet the border's open and we're bringing people in. We don't know if they have COVID or not. We have no idea what's going on down there. And I think that's the hypocrisy of it. Forget the Trump administration, forget Obama, forget whoever. It's just right now with the crisis that they say we have, you're telling sports teams you can't fill a stadium, yet we can bring anybody in over the border. That just doesn't.
I'm not in favor of wide open stadiums either. I mean, I think we can have larger crowds. We can still maintain distancing. Something that's of even more concern to me, Biden administration has got a big push on to open schools, and yet a part and parcel of that doesn't seem to be vaccination of teachers. And it seems to me that at an absolute minimum, if you're going to force me as a teacher to be in a classroom with a bunch of kids who are all vectors all over the community, we're going to cut the distancing down to 3 feet for kids, apparently, et cetera. I think you need to ensure that the teachers are going to be as safe as they possibly can be. So, I mean, if they want vaccinations, they've got to be able to get them, period, if you want them to work in a school.
But here's the, not your position, I'm just saying in general, the hypocrisy of all the different ways conservatives are treated and liberals are treated. The four of us can't cross the border and go to Swiss Chalet. We can't go to Golden Nugget Bingo, or you can't go to Fort Erie. Border's closed, but yet the border's wide open for illegal immigrants to cross in Mexico. We talk about in-school instruction. A lot of the children of migrant families, immigrant families who cross illegally, they're getting in-person, in-school instruction, and yet a lot of our kids are being taught remotely. And I think that's the problem that at least I have when it comes to it. It's really not the policy, but more the hypocrisy that really, I think, just angers me, gets my Ukrainian up.
So you conservatives want me to feel bad for you? No, I'm not breaking out my crying towel.
Not even Easter weekend?
Obviously, there's biases both ways. There are legitimate criticisms of what's happening at the border. And, you have to control a border in order to be a country, quite honestly. If you don't, where does your country begin and end?
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, Peter. I think there are citizens here, though, already that I think deserve the protection before we allow others that aren't even citizens to come in and cause maybe potentially further harm to those citizens. And then to your point, though, about not opening stadiums, not opening arenas, not being able to gather publicly, like when then? Like when can we? Because it seems like we've gone, it just, the whole proverbial goalpost getting moved. We've gone from it'll be months, it'll be into the fall, it'll be now, the next school year and the next. Like at some point, don't we all have to say, this is under control? They know how to treat this COVID crisis, the therapies, the medications, the vaccines now. When is it long enough?
And I'd love to know that vaccine count that we need to go back to normal, because every time it's okay, get the vaccine, we'll be fine. And now it's, well, if you get the vaccine, you still need the 2 masks, you still need to be social. When is there a number? I mean, I don't know. You might know this. You might know. Is there a number of vaccinations? They said herd immunity is almost here, if not here already. Like, at what point? Is there a number on it? Is there a?
I don't think we're close to herd immunity in terms of percent vaccinated. I think we're only about 30% of people in this country have been vaccinated so far. I think you've got to get to more like 60, 70%, and we've got to get going. I have to give Biden credit on that. Never was my favorite politician, just so you know, but I think he's really pushed vaccinations. Not to steer this, but gets to issues that we've had recently in Erie County. 2 weeks ago, you couldn't get a vaccination anywhere. I know people that went to Allegheny County. I know people that went to Syracuse. Now, all of a sudden, Walgreens is calling me up, asking me to come in and get vaccinated. Fortunately, I already had been. I was at the drugstore the other day picking up a prescription. There's a line of people. What happened that broke the logjam? I'd like some answers to what Erie County's been doing. Other counties had available vaccines. Why didn't we? And did somebody? I've heard that the state stepped in to break the logjam. I don't know.
Well,
I've seen no reporting on it.
It's been an absolute train wreck. I mean, look, and I go back to the county executive to early January, post the January 6th riots, where the elderly couldn't get vaccines. I mean, I even a very dear friend of mine who's a double amputee, cancer survivor, brittle bone disease. He's just under 65 years old, and he couldn't get a vaccine. But where was the county executive's priorities? Sending me a 2-page letter demanding why I was in Washington, D.C. participating in riots when I was sitting in my office in the Rath building. I mean, an absolute train wreck, our vaccination rollout, and I think it's the priorities of the current county executive, and it's not on the health and safety of our people. It's him taking political pot shots at me.
Yeah, and I guess I just get so frustrated. We've talked to guys like Robbie De Niro closing down his gym and just had to, create a lawsuit, to basically get his gym open. He just kept hearing, it'll be soon, or there's no guidance on when can he open his business. And as he's not opening his business, just like hundreds of others in New York State, Erie County, they're not making money. And they're not able to provide for their home.
They're losing money because they're paying utilities, they're paying taxes, they're losing money.
And, and it just comes to the point of, all right, if 60% herd immunity is where we're going, then can we make sure we agree that it is 60%, that it doesn't become 75%? And then it's not 100% and you still have to wear 1 mask or 2 masks. Because that's what happens. Everything keeps changing as we continue to move along. And I think people are frustrated by, are we really going to stick to a certain guideline, a rule? Because even Dr. Fauci early on, he's changed his opinions over and over. And I'm not saying people don't have the right to see what the science is telling them, but this seems like far more than about the science.
And it feels like as we progress, then we get the impending doom conversation a week later. So, hey, things are going well. We're getting to the summertime in most of our country. It's going to be better. And then, hey, there's a double secret variant coming in. You're going to be impending doom again. It just,
and a lot of it has to do with our favorite governor. A lot of it has to do with our favorite governor, Andrew Cuomo, on what happens in that respect.
Right. And Mike, the variants, right? Now we're talking about variants and the California variant, and I thought that was offensive because we weren't supposed to call it the China virus, so they were calling it the California variant. But it just seems endless, this will not go away. And I think that's what's so frustrating, especially if you're counting on your business to be open, to make a living and to provide for employees and so forth.
And to go back to the border crisis too, that's why that's frustrating me, because as we're panicking in our country, we're just allowing others to come in who we don't know if they, and again, I'm not saying it's a Trump or Biden issue on immigration. We've talked to Mark Daniels in Arizona, Sheriff Daniels, and he said this border issue has been a major problem for 30-something years. So
that's what you said.
And
that's
it's truly,
right. That's right.
It truly is. It's not a Biden. It's just right now the fact that we have major issues in our country with this virus, according to scientists and health professionals, and yet we have no care in the world about letting others in that could have it or could be spreading it.
But Governor Cuomo says, wait a minute, let's send all seniors stricken with COVID into nursing homes, but let's keep your kids out of school, from our governor who's under a lot of...
Right, and I have such a problem with that, and him aside, whoever was in that leadership position, I have such a problem that they didn't take a more complex approach to solving this, right? They took a simple approach. COVID, it's dangerous, it's killing people, so everyone wear masks and stay 6 feet apart. We took the wrong approach. Students, we found, didn't really have to do all of those things. They could actually be okay. They could get into classrooms with each other. Nursing homes, on the other hand, of which my mom is in an assisted living center, they've seen half of their population die because they took a too simple of an approach. I'd go up to the window to see my mom, and I'd look through the screen, and next to her is an aide with simply a paper mask on. I think that woman should be in a hazmat suit. I mean, literally, my mom's right next to her, and this woman with a paper mask is saying, okay, go ahead, you guys can talk, and she's literally right next to her. They should have been taking far more precautions for the most vulnerable, and they didn't.
Governor Cuomo's taking a lot of heat for, well, not only that, but he's in the news of late for a lot of other issues and things.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about that. But
his immunity for a nursing home deal was rather fascinating also, and there's been a lot of smoke about that, but no fire so far.
Is that limiting the lawsuits? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, in essence, he set up a rule that gave nursing homes immunity from prosecution for problems with COVID. The interesting part about that, a large number of other states picked up on the same thing. Now, I think the state legislature recently undid that. So, nursing homes are now liable again, but, dumping patients into nursing homes that may not have been ready to take them and saying, oh, by the way, you're going to be immune for liability if you don't do your job properly is real dicey stuff.
I agree. I agree. Like, it's about accountability in whatever we do, as a financial advisor, as Erie County Comptroller, as an attorney, right? As a P&C expert. We can't misguide people and think that we're just free and clear of any accountability.
Well, and we've said this from the beginning with all these scandals he has. I agree he gets the due process of it all. I think we all agree on that. That's how it works, right? You get your fair shot at representation and going through the court system. But, and I said this to, I think Dave DiPietro, I said it to, and he said this doesn't exist, but shouldn't he have to take a leave of absence and just let this play out? This is not one or two minor things. This is now becoming 10 sexual assault allegations and thousands of potential deaths on his watch. I mean, don't you think at some point, we were quick to impeach Donald Trump because we didn't like him, which is fine, but don't you think at some point here we have to take a leave of absence or maybe really fast track the legal system here? I mean, that's in your wheelhouse.
Trump didn't take a leave of absence.
Well, but for Governor Cuomo, I'll use the standard that he put in for Brett Kavanaugh. When the allegations about Brett Kavanaugh came up by our Supreme Court Justice, Governor Cuomo said he should take a lie detector test. And so if it's good enough for Brett Kavanaugh and Governor Cuomo, then I think he should too. Let's start there at least.
To me, it comes down to, can someone in his position continue to be a competent leader? Or are there just far too many distractions? For Trump, I saw him every single day attacking policy issues and continuing to kind of push the ball along on so many issues. I always joked with my clients and said, I kind of have this vision of Trump waking up at 3 a.m. with this huge whiteboard that has, China trade, all this list of things that he promised the American people. And then there you go, you're seeing a press conference or you're hearing about him trying to just push the ball forward. I mean, the things he did in the Middle East and with China trade and trying to secure the border. I mean, he really did attempt to I guess keep his promises.
Oh, come on, Peter. He put the ball right on the tee for you.
What isn't Cuomo doing that he's supposed to be doing?
I just think from his perspective, what's he doing? I think and this takes out of the bigger equation about sexual harassment allegations, nursing homes, I just get nervous with him in one party dominant control over government. Like, in the same respect, I think it would be dangerous, quite frankly, to have people on the extreme right be 100% in control of government. The checks and balances that don't exist right now in state government, that's what scares me. And I think that's why a lot of people are leaving.
Get used to New York State. I mean, what's the real possibility that that's going to turn around?
Zero.
The sexual harassment stuff, I think there's going to be an investigation. But, I mean, there's no allegations that he raped anybody. He's not going to jail. He's a bad guy, okay? People have known that he's a bully and a thug kind of guy for a long, long time. That's nothing new. He's always been an arm buster. And, it turns out, it looks like, I mean, if the allegations are true, and who knows, I wasn't there, the guy's also sexually a pig. So what? I mean, is that illegal? Does that remove you from office? That's a political decision. And by the way, don't rule out the chances and the possibility of him running and getting elected again.
Scary thought.
70% of the vote is New York City way.
To go back to I mean, what has he not done? I mean, I look, based on his own party coming out against him too, I do think, fudging numbers or not disclosing numbers on a virus that is, what they have pitched as the worst virus that's hit our country in 80 years or whenever it was. But I think that's a problem. I do think that's a problem. His own party's saying he did it.
But who's investigating that? As far as I know right now, there's no action going on with respect to that. And I believe that I don't think the Attorney General in New York can get involved in that unless somebody refers that issue to her for investigation. I think those are part of the rules.
I thought there was some semblance of either a federal or state investigation into him not disclosing the true accurate deaths in nursing homes.
I think the feds may be looking into
Right.
that, and it's probably got to do with something along the lines of he or his aides under his instruction, fudging, giving inaccurate reports to the federal government, lying in reports to the federal government, if in fact they did.
But let's not, ignore presidential politics either. Kamala Harris might be running for president in 2024, so too might Andrew Cuomo. So, I just have, maybe it's just the thought process of, well, wait a minute, they're going to take him out politically, so he's not a contender in 2024 to clear the field for Kamala Harris.
Well, one of the ones that kills me about taking people out politically for sexual harassment alone, okay, is Al Franken. Al Franken never should have resigned. The whole world jumped on him for things that he did a number of years before that are the sorts of things that a comedian did, and that's what he was at that time, a comedian.
But Kirsten
He wasn't a
Gillibrand
politician.
and others jumped all over him, but they were very quiet at the beginning of the stages with Governor Cuomo's allegations.
They ran Franken out of Dodge. There's just no two ways about it, and he should not have resigned.
But it took them a long time to be as vocal and as angry about him than they were about Andrew Cuomo.
No, there's no two ways about it.
Right. And Andrew Cuomo is alleged to have done some of these things while he's been governor. So he wasn't formerly a stand-up comedian doing these things, then became governor, and then was alleged to have done these things. He was doing these things with people that were basically his underlings, right? People trying to work up maybe the structure of New York State politics. And so that's where, and even on Trump, we heard all sorts of disgusting things about Trump. As far as I know, those were all things before his political motivations came into play, right? When he came down that escalator, I don't think anything from that point on he'd ever been alleged to do in terms of, gross behavior, sexual harassment, all those types of things.
And I agree with what you said. Who knows what's true with Cuomo? Who knows what it was? And he probably is just, like you said, a perfect word, a pig, right? That's probably what he is. It's probably the perfect word to describe him. He's a pig. But again, I just think it's a lot of different things that have come out. And to me, I'm not putting sexual assault, the fact that we are now second guessing that again. Are these people just coming out because they want them out or they want money from them? That's sad to think that's where we are on sexual harassment with people, that we're second guessing if those allegations are even real. But potential deaths on his own hands from what they've said is him not disclosing the right information is really, and my grandfather's in the nursing home, your mother, it's a scary thing to think about, that people's lives were just kind of, thrown around like it's no big deal.
They didn't have a complex solution to a very complex problem.
You would have thought by the press conferences they did, though, with their diagrams and the PowerPoints and the spreadsheets and
and not to divert again, but the whole border crisis is about figuring out a very complex issue by getting the most qualified people in the room. And here Mr. Biden and the new secretary, they go ahead and dismantle that Homeland Security Advisory Council. Those are the very people who know exactly what's going on down there. Right. And I get it, and we talked to Chris Naco, sheriff down in Pasco County in Florida. He said, I understand that a new administration wants to get their own people. But I said, but my goodness, at the very moment when there seems to be a very big crisis, not just a challenge, they're releasing people, terminating people from this council. Why on earth would you do it now? And it just seems a little backwards. Seems wrong, you know. Let's just bring it back. Oh, go ahead, Peter. Sorry.
No, but I mean, are there easy solutions to the border? Is there an easy solution to when we reopen with COVID? What if COVID's forever? Read an article the other day. There are a number of knowledgeable scientists who say that if most of the world doesn't vaccinate, we've got a big petri dish for development of variants that are going to get around our current ability to vaccinate. And then we need new vaccinations for them. Then we've got to start vaccination all over again. We better start planning for what we're going to do if there isn't a solution.
But the flu has been in play in our society, in our environment for many, many years. Every year there's new flu variants, right? And now it seems like the flu's pretty much gone away. Like, we don't even see significant data on how bad was the flu in 2020. Right. See, that's where I just think science and politics, we're getting this bleeding of the two, and it's so difficult to know what the heck is the true facts.
You're absolutely right. And by the way, the flu may have gone away because of masking and distancing that had to do with COVID precautions. Who knows?
But we also didn't shut down the entire world before COVID because of flu. So
well, we haven't had flu with the lethality of this, since 1918. We called it the Spanish flu.
You remember
Isn't that
it.
awful?
You were around back then.
I remember that. We called it the Spanish flu then, by the way. And there's one variant, I think it's 1.1.1.7, which actually is out of Britain, but I guess we don't call it the British variant. So, yeah.
No, we don't. That'd be offensive. So bringing just back to kind of Erie County, and I guess New York State, we've seen such a reduction of the number of businesses that are now open. Still, schools are primarily shut down. A lot of people are leaving New York State. It used to be just because they want to find the warmer weather. Maybe it's lower taxes. It seems like it's becoming more about social issues and response to things like COVID. The more restrictive response in New York versus the more permissive response in Florida, that kind of thing. What can we do for those listening and watching to encourage or bring some light about this area? And because a lot of people I talk to, they say, Mike, I get it. Like, it kind of does suck to be a New Yorker at times, but I can't go anywhere. I have to stay. How can we encourage them and bring some optimism to this?
You hit the nail on the head, though, because even with redistricting and the population of New York City being majority Democrats, it's my opinion that there will be a permanent Democratic majority driven by New York City that's driving New York State government forever. I mean, do you see that changing?
Every indication that's true. And, ideas of secession, et cetera, just don't make any sense, because from a dollars and cents point of view, the plain truth is that New York City's paying for New York State.
But I've never had the discussion with my wife until recently about what are we doing here? Like, when it comes to either taxes, the cost of living, even just quality of life. And we have 3 kids, especially 2 young boys. We have friends who live down south who every day they're outside playing with their kids, and we're stuck in the house. You can't go to school. You have to put a mask on going to restaurants, bars. And I think eventually, people, especially in the middle class, are just going to say, enough. We're done. Mm-hmm. And we're out of here to North Carolina, Texas, Florida, places like that.
And to go to what you said before, like, what if it doesn't end? And that is a good point, because it seems that way, like it'll never end. But what happens when, and we talked with Robbie De Niro about this a little bit, what happens when all these businesses continue to shut down? And not being open full time or open at 100% capacity, it finally gets you, and you finally have to shut down. What happens if Erie County loses another 25-30% of businesses? The dollars and cents would say taxes have to go up, or they got to find some money from somewhere, right? Money has to come from somewhere. And government bailout, like, hey, we'll help out New York State. That's only going to happen so many times, I'd imagine. You would know this more than I would. That's only going to happen so many times. If you get another Trump in there, it was like, I'm not helping you until you open up, or something has to change, right? Something has to change.
We hope.
Don't disagree. Something's got to break here. I don't know how we can accommodate permanent pandemic. I mean, if we're facing that, that's grim.
Well, lovely note. Happy Easter, everyone. God bless America.
On that note, my good permanent pandemic. That would be if we live under permanent pandemic rules and regulations.
Thanks.
But I think at some point it has to be. I mean, I hate to say we have to just deal with it, but we're just going to have to deal with it at some point. I mean, you can't shut places down for 100 years because we won't have a country anymore at that point.
Or a world.
Right.
Any
Right.
final thoughts?
Happy Easter, everyone. Regardless
Yes.
of what you believe or what you don't believe, I wish everyone a blessed Easter weekend and season.
Have a good holiday to everyone.
Absolutely.
Amen.
Absolutely. Good. Any other words of wisdom?
That's all I got.
That's all you've got. He's tapped out, folks. So we went so long. We tapped him right out of his words of wisdom. So that will be a wrap, though, for this week, folks. Stefan Mychajliw, Peter Reis, thank you again both for joining us. This is pretty civil, I'd say.
Nobody's injured. That's
We
good.
didn't hit anybody in the head.
Yet.
No, I
We
think
still got to go to the parking lot.
the distance helped. You know, you couldn't give
No,
each
Peter's
other
a great guy. I think he's a great man. He's got a great family, great wife. And again, I think this discussion just proves that even people with differing opinions can sit over a cup of coffee and just have a reasonable discussion without wanting to cancel one another.
No question. And I can tell you both care about the things you believe in, which is a very admirable trait. So, folks, to reach us throughout the week for any of your wealth management insurance needs, you can reach us at 833-FIN-GUYS or find us on thefinancialguys.com website. For my co-host, Mike Speraza, I'm Mike Hayflick. Thanks for tuning in. Remember, you can find this and all other episodes of the TFG Aftershow on YouTube. And we're going to have a great weekend, right? Nice holiday weekend. Join us again, folks, for the TFG Aftershow.